All right, we are live, gentlemen. Welcome to the Gridiron Heroics Football Show. I'm Max Dean. You can find me on Twitter at the Max Dean, and we are here with Kyle Nishida and Brison Owens. Kyle, how you doing today, man?
Doing all right. Had a little bit of a late night watching a lot of the Pac-12 After Dark madness. Heck, UCLA going down in the way they did was pretty shocking. But happy to be here and looking to talk some NFL. We got one going on, obviously, right now.
Yeah, yes, we do, and we'll comment on that obviously, although we can't really pick it since it's already started. And Brison Owens, how you doing, man?
I'm doing really well so far, man. Nothing better than waking up early to watch some okay football teams play football. Nothing better. It's like when the Broncos played the Jags. Nothing better than waking up to watch that game.
Yeah, it's hard to know who's going to be good. I mean, if the Bucks were as good as they were supposed to be, this probably would be actually a good
hmm
game. But it's hard to predict for sure. So speaking of that first game, I took the Seahawks away at +2.5. I just feel like they're kind of vibing right now. Um, I know we're not really going to spend much time on it since it's already going, but I will just shout out my pick. Kyle, who'd you take for them?
I took the Bucks minus 2.5. Now, last week I did say that I was completely out on the Bucks. I don't think they're a very good team, and I still don't think that. I just think it was more of a spot where I think Tampa's had to face a tougher set of teams as opposed to Seattle. Seattle's kind of had to been able to walk through some teams that are kind of iffy. So I just like the spot for Tampa, so I took them minus 2.5.
Yeah, I feel that. I don't think this was an obvious choice, to be honest. What about you,
Mm.
Bryson?
Yeah, I also took the Seahawks at +2.5 on this game. I just thought they were playing with a lot more momentum than the Buccaneers have been playing. They can really run the football with Kenneth Walker. That has been a big staple to their offense the last few weeks. And that defense, I thought it was going to be a low scoring game, which that seems to be the trend going on so far. And I just thought in a low scoring game that tends to be, a closer matchup between the two teams and the really talented secondary the Seahawks have been playing with so far would do numbers on the Bucks offense.
Yeah. All right. So we shall see how that unfolds while we are live here. We'll probably get, you know, a good chunk of the way through the game, but it's time to pick all of the games for 1 p.m. and beyond. And we are going to start off with the Browns +3.5 at the Dolphins. So injury report, it's not crazy extensive for either team. The big ones would definitely be tackles for me for the Miami Dolphins. It's a kind of a questionable position right now. They got Austin Jackson out at the questionable at the moment, and Taron Armstead questionable at the moment. So I don't personally have an update on which one of those guys is most likely to play, but um, yeah, I mean, the explosion of the Dolphins offense seems still hard to get past even with those guys out. But I think that would be the big one, especially with Myles Garrett being such a dominant pass rusher. If Armstead's not there, that's a big problem. Kyle, who are you picking in this game?
Well, I'm gonna go with the Dolphins minus 3.5 here. It's interesting. The past two games, the Dolphins have actually put points together. Remember, the beginning of the season, they were getting a lot of yards, but outside of that Baltimore game where they had that crazy comeback, they weren't really putting a lot of points on the board. Now they're putting points on the board, and if that's the case, it's gonna be really hard for the Browns to keep up in a shootout style of game. The past two games for the Dolphins has been a shootout. Um, I would anticipate the Dolphins find a way to cover and win by at least 4 points. So I'll go with the Dolphins at home minus 3.5.
Yeah, I've also got the Dolphins covering this game. It's tough betting against the Browns only in the fact that they have Nick Chubb in games like this. These are two pretty poor defenses. Neither defense has been playing lights out so far. So this is going to be a game for the Dolphins where they really get to see if the Bradley Chubb trade is going to work out for them this early, make a pretty early impact defensively. But Nick Chubb has that ability to just extend drives and make a 4 minute non-scoring drive into a 7 minute scoring drive. It just kills clock for the Dolphins. But I'm taking the Dolphins because I think that they're more versatile offensively. I think they have more weapons that can beat the Browns than the Browns have. And I think that the way Tua's been playing since he came back from that injury is really impressive. I just don't think the Browns have anyone on that defense who's going to be able to stop either Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle. And then you've got Mike Gesicki getting involved. You've got Jeff Wilson. We'll see how much of an impact he has in the run game. I think he'll help improve that area of the offense for the Dolphins. So I think the Dolphins, just in the fact of how many weapons they have, are going to be able to outlast the Browns in this game.
Also, I wanted to add, did anybody even realize that Jeff Wilson was on that team? I didn't even realize that, and all of a sudden I saw it's like, oh, he got cut by the Niners. That was crazy when I just saw him just
No,
show
the Dolphins
up on the
traded for him.
Oh,
Yeah, he was
that's
part of the
right.
Bradley
Okay.
Chubb trade.
That's right. Okay. I was just like, what on earth? I did not see Jeff Wilson Jr. on that Dolphins team. And all of a sudden, oh, now their run game's actually got a guy that is pretty stable.
Yeah, well, I think it was necessary because he has speed too, but Mostert is he's so injury prone over his career that it's like it looks good for a while, and then the next thing you know, he's unavailable for the rest of the season. So this lets him split that workload a little bit. I think he fits the offense better than the other backs that they had alongside Mostert. But I'm going to take Dolphins in this game because, frankly, I think it'll be a close game for the first half because the Browns are able to move the ball offensively with Nick Chubb getting a big play here and there out of Amari Cooper. No David Njoku this week. I believe he's out officially. And so I think it'll be close, but the Dolphins will ultimately just keep scoring in the second half. And there will be a couple of drives here and there that just don't get it done from the Browns. And you basically have to get points out of pretty much every drive to keep up with them. So I think by the end of it, it won't be a blowout, but it will be a margin of victory of more than 3.5. So I will take the Dolphins at -3.5 as well. All right. Next up, we have the Jaguars visiting the Chiefs. Jags are +9.5 in this game. You know, I mean, the Jaguars were a little bit better last week. I guess it'll be tough for them to keep up with the Chiefs. 9.5 is not the hugest spread, so that's probably reasonable. I mean, I think that's a fair spread. You could probably go either way. I think I know which way I'm leaning, but you know me, I like to hear you guys go first. So Kyle, what you got?
Yeah, this is kind of a tough line for me just because of the way Kansas City looked last week against the Titans, who couldn't throw the football. They had to go to overtime just to even win that game. I'm gonna take the Chiefs here -9.5. I was going back and forth on this. I'm just gonna chalk up that performance last week to more. Tennessee's been a team that the Chiefs have always had problems with, even when Alex Smith was there in Kansas City. So I'm just going to chalk that up as that's the team that's always going to be their one-off. And I think the Chiefs get back to what they should have been, or what I thought they were going to do coming off the bye last week. They'll at least cover by and win by at least 10 points.
I've got the Jaguars covering this game. I think they're going to lose because I think the Chiefs are just a better football team. But the Jags have done a really good job of keeping games close. They have not lost a game by more than 8 points so far this season. So that really plays into this kind of factor. And a big reason why I think the Chiefs struggled against the Titans is the Titans' ability to run the football and keep Patrick Mahomes off the field. And the Jaguars can do not the same thing because they don't have the same back, but they can do a pretty similar thing with Travis Etienne, who's been playing very well for them so far this season since he became the starting running back. And this Chiefs defense, it's not very good, especially against the pass. They're 24th against the pass. I think there are going to be ways for Trevor Lawrence to lead this offense on the field and put up points. And yeah, Patrick Mahomes is probably going to get his because that's what this offense is. They can't run the football. So it's going to be up to Patrick Mahomes, and he's going to be able to carry them to a win. But I just don't know if that's sustainable enough to blow out this Jaguars team, who's done a really good job of keeping games close.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Jags here at +9.5. It's just a little bit of a big spread. I mean, they can win by more than a touchdown and still not cover 9.5. So I'm going to roll with them for now. The Chiefs are healthy. for the most part, Miko Hardman is their only key offensive player who's out, which means that they'll be able to move the ball pretty well. Oh man, you know what? No, I think this is the first time I've ever done this on our show. I am mid-pick changing. The Chiefs offense is just too good. I mean, I think that they can put up a ton of points. Yeah. Yep, I'm taking the Chiefs. I talked myself out of it midstream because they've still got Juju Smith-Schuster. They've still got all of their backs. They've still got Travis Kelce, obviously, and I don't know. I in Chiefs, like at the Chiefs Stadium. Yeah, I'm taking the Chiefs. All right. Next up, we have the Saints in a straight-up pick'em, the first of the season, at the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I don't think that this would be a pick'em, but if you look at the Saints injury report, they are missing so many guys. Out, Marshawn Lattimore, Eric McCoy, Pete Werner, Mark Ingram, Andrews Pete. They are also questionable with Marcus May, Marcus Davenport, Tano Passignon, PJ Williams. And Pittsburgh is missing like basically their entire starting secondary, but that's a lot of guys for the Saints. Kyle, who do you think are gonna come away with this one? First of all, I have to ask: when we pick this game, how do you even win? It's just like if it's 0-0, then you can't even score off of this game.
Yeah, I think it's just a straight up you pick the winner in this scenario.
Okay.
It's kind of weird because the line on this is actually kind of funny because if I'm not mistaken, the Saints were road favorites here, and I checked even last night, and it was a 1-point spread in favor of the Saints, and so I actually have it on mine locked in at Steelers plus 1.5, and I'm gonna stick with the Steelers in the pick'em scenario. You mentioned the laundry list of injuries that the Saints have to deal with. Also, they're still rolling with Andy Dalton, and he's 1-4 as a road favorite since 2018. Obviously, he hasn't played a lot of games during that span, but in just this scenario, this is not a good spot for him. With the Saints being so banged up, he's gonna have to carry this team, and unfortunately, he doesn't have a lot of good weapons for him to carry the team with him. So I'm just gonna go with the Steelers right here. I think the Steelers, coming off a bye, may have figured some things that might work better for Kenny Pickett, whereas they just kind of threw him in there and said, "Here you go, rookie." So I have a feeling they might have a better game plan for him, at least in this scenario. So I'll go with the Steelers in this pick'em scenario.
I'm going to take the Saints in this game. This is a pretty injury-riddled game for both teams. I think I heard that TJ Watt's coming back for the Steelers was going to play a big role in this, but like Max said, that entire secondary pretty much is out for the Steelers, which is going to play a big factor in this game, in my opinion. You mentioned how the Saints don't have great weapons, Kyle, but they might have the most dangerous weapon in this game in Alvin Kamara. And in 4 of his last 5 games, he's gone for over 100 total yards of offense. And I don't know if there's a single Steeler who's gone over 100 yards of total offense so far this season. They can't run the football. Did you guys see, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, where Najee Harris caught a ball in the flat and had no one in front of him, 2 yards away from the first down, and like tried to juke no one, and then you lost yards. That was the epitome of the Steelers season so far this year. And then Kenny Pickett, you mentioned how it's a rough spot for Dalton. Pickett's not been good this year. He has 2 touchdowns to 8 interceptions this season. This Saints defense, even with all the injuries, have the personnel to get after Pickett in this game. I think the Saints are they're really injured, but I think they just have enough players to squeak by Pittsburgh with a win.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Saints as well. I know they're missing a lot, but the entire secondary is basically missing for the Steelers. Akella Witherspoon is out. William Jackson is out. Minkah Fitzpatrick is out. And, as great as TJ Watt is, if he's not fully healthy, Minkah Fitzpatrick is easily their best and most important player for the defense. That actually makes them a legitimate defense. So it is a big deal that TJ Watt's coming back, but I don't know what he's going to be like in his first game back. I don't know exactly what that status is. And in a straight up pick 'em, I'm going to take the Saints because it's not just Alvin Kamara. I mean, I think that right now, Chris Olave has every case, every opportunity to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. He's made a very good case for himself. I think he's been very, very good. And so they're leaving themselves susceptible in that secondary. And we'll see. I mean, 0-0, I'll take the Saints just because I trust them to score. I mean, even if it's an overall low-scoring game, if they can win by at least 1 point, that's a win for me, and I'll roll with that. All right. Next up, we have the Broncos hosting the Titans. Oops, wrong one there. And the Broncos are plus 2.5 home. Or no, excuse me, road underdogs. I think this is weird. I know that Ryan Tannehill is still questionable, but I feel like the Broncos have been so bad and the Titans just went toe-to-toe with the Chiefs on Monday Night Football. So even if Tannehill is not there, like this, I feel like the spread should be a little bit bigger. Like it should be big enough for me to at least consider picking the Broncos, and I don't think that this is that. That's my personal opinion. I know I'm kind of burying the lead there, but Kyle, what do you think?
Yeah, I talk about a game where I'm not sure how many points are going to get scored here, especially if Tannehill doesn't go. I'm going to go with the Broncos here. This is kind of a strange spot in terms of I think the game total is around 42, and in the past 4 years, the underdogs in this scenario have covered the spread 60% of the time. So I realize the Broncos have not played very well, but I just feel like after getting an extra couple of days to kind of go through some stuff, they have to have gotten at least a smidge better than what they were looking like to begin this season. And in that scenario, if the Titans are banged up, if Malik Willis is going to be the quarterback today, I'm just gonna roll with Russ. I know he hasn't been playing great, but I can't go with the guy that can't make 5 pass completions in a game. I just can't do it. So I'm gonna take the Broncos here. Hopefully Tannehill doesn't play, but even if Tannehill plays, I still like the Broncos' chances of covering as well.
Yeah, I'm also taking the Broncos to cover this game. But before I get into why, I need to do a quick little rant about the Broncos for a second, just because we're the only team in the NFL that I can imagine comes off a bye week more injured than we were before the bye week.
Who's rushing the passer in this game?
That's great question. It's going to be Jonathan Cooper and the new guy from the Jets.
Have Martin.
Maybe Nick Bonito. Nick Bonito did travel, which that'll help a little bit, but still. The reason I'm taking the Broncos in this game, though, is it doesn't really matter who's at quarterback in this game. They're not going to complete very many passes. They are the 31st ranked passing offense in this league, and the Broncos are the first ranked passing defense. So even if it's Malik Willis or Ryan Tannehill, they're not going to throw the ball a ton in this game. We know it's going to be done through Derrick Henry. And if there's a team over Derrick Henry's career that has shown the ability to stop him, it's the Broncos. He averages 62 yards per game against the Broncos, and he's never scored a touchdown, which is pretty insane to think about. I think he's played in 3 games against the Broncos and has 0 touchdowns. And I think, in my opinion, this is the best Broncos defense since the Super Bowl season. So I don't know if that's going to be a weak spot in this game for the Broncos either. So I just think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I trust in the Broncos' offense going against this really bad Titans defense more than I trust the Titans' offense going against one of the best defenses in football.
Okay, so I'm the lone guy here, taking the Titans. I think that if it's gonna in a game like this, I'm just gonna trust coaching, and I think Mike Vrabel just continues to show his chops, week after week, and you stack that up against the resume for Hackett, and it just doesn't look that good. And I mean, look, it's early in the guy's career, and I think it's pretty clear that the Russell Wilson move just hasn't really worked out. I think it would be a pretty big surprise to me if that ends up being a successful move in the long run. I think the trajectory is just not good right now. So it's maybe you say Russ is the guy that's the real problem. Maybe you say Hackett's the guy that's the real problem. Maybe it's both. I don't know, but it's clearly not working. I think when you look offensively, it's definitely better off for the Broncos that they don't have to face Bud Dupree and Jeffrey Simmons. I mean, those guys are very good, especially Jeffrey Simmons.
Mhm.
But I still think the offensive line is too banged up and wasn't that great to begin with. That whoever's out there for that quality defense is still, going to face an uphill battle. And I don't know, man. I understand that they have Patrick Queen on the back end, but Baron Browning has kind of been their secret weapon as a pass rusher. And now that they traded away Bradley Chubb, it's like I know that they're not going to be passing the ball much anyway, but I think it's just, I don't know, man. I think it comes down to coaching. It really does. Like, it's too close of a game. So I'm going to take Titans at 2.5. I think the Broncos definitely could win this game, because, I mean, it's any given Sunday, but I'm more comfortable picking the team that I mean, just look at the record. I know that they haven't necessarily faced the best teams, but they stood tall against the Chiefs on primetime, and I just don't think I'm ever going to pick a team over a Vrabel-led team if I'm not very confident in them. So, all right. Texans plus 5.5 at the Giants. So, Giants are coming off a bye week. They have a couple of guys injured. I mean, they're going to be missing Kenny Golladay. Probably, I think he's questionable, but I think he's going to be out. And then they've got Evan Neal out as well. But, I mean, is that really going to be enough for the Texans to overcome them? The question really will just be like, do you think they're going to win by more than 5 or not? So, Kyle, what do you got?
Yeah, another game. I'm not sure how many points are going to get scored in because I think we kind of know where both these teams are. Giants obviously are Saquon Barkley dependent, and they use a lot of trick plays to get scoring done. Meanwhile, the Texans just don't have the offense at all. I think they're in line to be the first team to take a quarterback or be in the position to take the best quarterback on the board when the NFL draft comes around. So I don't really like this number, but I'm just going to go with the team that's been one of the more profitable teams in the league when it comes to covering spreads this season, and that would be the Giants. So I'll take the Giants -5. I think the Giants have a good enough defense to at least keep Dameon Pierce at bay. Obviously, Pierce is going to get his, but at the same time, I also think Saquon Barkley is going to get his against that Texans defense. And so, in that scenario, if Saquon goes off, I don't see how the Texans keep up. So, Giants -5 for me.
I'm going to take Houston to cover the spread. I think, like you said, Kyle, it's going to be a really low-scoring game. Those tend to play themselves into tighter games. Usually comes down to the final drive in those type of scenarios. And there's going to be a lot of running games or running plays in this game. It's going to be Saquon and Dameon Pierce and not a lot of passing. I think just at the end of the day, the Texans have also done a pretty good job of covering spreads. And the Giants haven't blown a lot of teams out. I don't think you don't have to blow the Texans out to get a 5-point spread. But I just don't know if the Giants have the overall personnel to win a game by that much when it's going to be this low scoring with this much run game involved. It's going to be a fast game. That clock is going to be running pretty much the whole time because even if it's going to be passing plays, they're not going to be deep ones. There's not going to be a lot of shots taken in this game. And Dameon Pierce is the reason why one of the biggest reasons I'm taking the Texans because he is a very, very good running back. I think he's going to be a huge reason why the Texans can stay in this game for as long as they will. I do think the Giants win, but I don't think it's going to be by that much.
Yeah, I was going back and forth through this, honestly, as we were as we're talking about it, and I'm settling on the Giants -5. I think I hear everything you're saying, and I was kind of leaning that way for a second there, Bryson. But ultimately, I do think that the defense of the Giants is going to be what makes the difference. I think Nico Collins is out, and Brandon Cooks is questionable. I think he's going to play, but I'm not sure how healthy he's going to be. You know what I mean? And if you're relying on a questionable Damian Pierce and a questionable Brandon Cooks on an offense that was already struggling against a really quite good, perhaps overperforming, but based on expectation, but quite good Giants defense with Wink Martindale at the helm. I think you look at scoring and you're like, yeah, maybe the Giants won't score that much, but I think this is going to be an ugly day for the Texans offense. I think that the defense of the Giants will help, and they're just really well coached as well. You know what I mean? As we go through the season, I don't think there are certainly guys where you're like, okay, every single year, this is a good head coach. You got your Belichick, you got your Shanahan, you got your Vrabel. And then there's guys who are just coaching really, really well in at least 1 year. And right now, you could definitely say that's the Giants. Will it continue that way over multiple seasons? Only time will tell. But they are clearly riding a wave at this point, and the Texans are kind of floundering. So I'm gonna go with them. All right, we have the Minnesota Vikings plus 6.5 against the Buffalo Bills. Now, while this is in Orchard Park, there is a question of whether Josh Allen will play. And I think taking a 6.5 point spread, if you think Allen will play, is probably fine. If you think he's not going to play, then obviously you grab that, before that spread tightens up a little bit. So what do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, so this is purely dependent on if Josh Allen plays, but I have a tendency to believe that he will play. I saw on the in the news they didn't call up, or they didn't convert Matt Barkley into the 53-man roster, so that's probably a sign of, hey, Allen's probably gonna at least healthy enough to try to give it a go. Otherwise, you wouldn't leave an emergency quarterback on the practice squad. So if that's the case, I'm gonna go with the Bills minus 6.5. Again, this is totally dependent on Josh Allen. I just don't think the Vikings have played anybody as good as the Bills, and I think the Bills know they missed an opportunity in terms of beating the Jets last weekend, and so I think they want to rectify the mistake. And yes, I think the Vikings do have a very scary weapon in Jamar Jefferson, but again, Justin Jefferson, seriously. I think the Bills also have one of the best pass defenses in the league, so I think they'll have at least a game plan to slow him down and then really put Kirk Cousins in a lot of trouble and a lot of duress during the game. So if Allen plays, I don't see them. I feel comfortable with them covering a 6.5 point spread, but obviously we'll have to see as game time comes around. But even then, I'd still like the Bills to win in this scenario.
I'm taking the Vikings to cover the spread, and I think I'm going to take them even if Josh Allen plays, because even if he plays, he's got an elbow injury on his throwing arm, which is going to be huge for this game because they're so Josh Allen dependent. You've seen they can't run the football. They have 100 running backs on that team that people have heard of, and they can't run the football with any of them. They're so Josh Allen dependent that I think that having an elbow injury on his throwing arms is a really scary situation for him. Plus, the Vikings have had a really solid pass rush, especially with Zadarius Smith, which is going to cause a lot of trouble for the Bills in the passing game. And you mentioned how talented the Bills have in the secondary. Their almost entire secondary is out in this game. They're missing their top two safeties and their really solid rookie corner, Kaiir Elam. He's doubtful for this game, so that's going to be a big factor in this game. The Vikings are also in the top 10 on defense against the run. So you already know, team that can't run the football going against a good run team, there's going to be a ton of passing in this game for the Bills. And I just don't know how much that elbow is going to hold up for Josh Allen. I think the Vikings are going to have more abilities to take big plays in this game because of Dalvin Cook, because of Justin Jefferson in this game. I think it's really going to be up to Dalvin Cook for the Vikings on offense. If they can get a run game going in this game, keep Josh Allen off the field, so he doesn't get that arm warm, and then he comes into the game having to throw the ball as much as he will have to. I think he's going to play a big factor for the Vikings in this one. And at the end of the day, I think, yeah, they haven't played anyone great, but that's not their fault. They have to beat the team put in front of them, and they've done it really well. So I think the Vikings are better than people are giving them credit for, and a 6.5 point spread is too disrespectful to a 7-1 team.
It's not disrespectful if Josh Allen was healthy. I'll be honest with you. I think it would be very unwise for them to start Josh Allen. And I know there's a lot of gamesmanship going on there. I think this is what I suspect will probably happen, and we'll find out if I'm right in about 2 hours here. I think they're going to have Case Keenum start the game with Josh Allen as the backup, and basically say, like, look, if you have to go in at some point, if you have to go in, we'll put you in. You know what I mean? We're probably going to have to run the ball a fair amount with you, or just in general. But to put him out there a week after hurting his elbow it's a mistake, I think, as the starter, having to sling the ball around. So right now, the Vikings are out Cam Dantzler and Dalvin Tomlinson, which is, it's not that bad. It doesn't really change the dynamic of their team too much. The Bills are missing Jordan Poyer and Greg Rousseau, doubtful Kyer Elam, and then Tremaine Edmonds is questionable as well. So he'll probably play. Usually if you're questionable by game time, more likely than not you're in. But those are more key players out for the Bills aside from Josh Allen. The Vikings are still going to be able to run the ball with Dalvin Cook. So even if the pass defense is good, which it has been, but they're missing Jordan Poyer. I mean, they're missing a lot of guys that make an impact there. And the Jets were able to run the ball. I don't know if you saw, but last week the Jets ran the ball on every single play on the key, like, game-defining drive at the end of the fourth quarter. They couldn't stop him. It was like a gain of 9, gain of 16, gain of 13, gain of 8. There was no stop until they got into the red zone and sold out on the run. And it was like, I don't know, man. Even if the Bills squeak away with this win somehow, I think that the Vikings are going to cover. And I think that do not be surprised if Josh Allen does not start, even though he is one of only 2 quarterbacks, I believe, that's active today. So I'm taking the Vikings. I'm hoping the Bills lose here, because even though the Bills are kind of like one of my soft spot teams, now that the Jets are actually contending and only half a game back for the division, there is a real possibility that the Jets could come out of the bye week leading the AFC East, which is wild. But that would require both the Bills and the Dolphins to lose this week for that to happen. So I'm officially against the Bills at this point. I didn't really think I would feel that way, but when your team starts to actually contend, then that happens. All right. Next up, we have the Lions at +3 visiting the Bears at -3. So this is a divisional game with a team that won over the Packers, but that's pretty much the only team they've won over. And then we have the Bears, who seem to have found their rhythm, but traded away a bunch of key defensive players. So, based on the trajectory of both of these teams, they can both score, and neither of them can really stop anybody. So you might want to take the over in this game, but as far as the spread, what do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, this is tough because it's weird. The Lions offense seems to have kind of simmered down a bit, whereas the Bears offense, they might have found something here with Justin Fields in terms of they're not overloading him with throwing the football. They've actually decided, okay, we know you're not the greatest thrower of the football, but we have ways of putting you in spots to either give you the option to run or pass, or diversify your ability to run the football. And sure enough, their offense has taken off after that. So right now it's just going off of who's looking better at the moment. I realize the Lions are coming off a win against the Packers, but they were slogging through that game much of the time. And I think the Bears are at home, where the Lions are coming in playing another dome game. The Lions haven't been great outdoors this year, so I'm going to go with the Bears -3. I think the Bears just are going to be in a better spot in this situation where they can run the football, they can diversify the offense, which is an amazing thing to say this late in the season with the Bears. But I think they'll be able to keep that Lions defense on their back heels and really confuse them, and do enough to outscore the Lions in terms of all things considered. And then the Lions, again, being a dome team, don't know if they're going to be as well prepared in terms of scoring on the road.
I'm going to take the Lions to cover the spread. And I think one of the biggest reasons, the Bears have found their groove offensively, and it's really been due to Justin Fields' legs. He's shown off his ability as a runner. I still have question marks as him as a thrower of the football. The team doesn't rely on it very heavily, but the Lions just have a more versatile offense. Jared Goff hasn't been great this season, but he hasn't been awful either. He has 14 touchdowns to 7 interceptions, which, again, not great, not overly terrible. You know that the Lions have a more diverse passing game with Jared Goff in, which is crazy to think about because I don't think anyone would have said that going into the season. But I think just the inconsistencies with Justin Fields throwing the football scares me too much to ever take the Bears in the game, because how reliant can you be on the run? Stopping the run is a easier job of game planning than stopping the pass. And if you can get the right personnel to stop the run, which I think the Lions have, I think the Lions have talent on that defense that hasn't shown, but they have talented middle linebackers specifically, and then Aiden Hutchinson's starting to get his groove going as a rookie. And I think he's going to play a big factor in getting to Justin Fields today. But I think I'm taking the Lions just because I'm more worried about the Bears offense staying as hot as they are than I am about the Lions getting back to where they were early in the season, because the Lions just have more weapons. They have a more consistent thrower of the football. And I think the offensive line's a little bit better. The offense just in general, in my opinion, is better for the Lions than for the Bears.
I'm taking the Bears in this game. So Justin Fields, you say it's easier to game plan against the run than it is against the pass. And that's true until you change the numbers with the running quarterback, because he forces you to have another man who can tackle, right? Like it's a lot tougher, a lot tougher to stop a running quarterback than it is just a general run scheme, because there's always that extra player on offense. The Bears, that Bears game last week, I know it was just one game, but it was quite impressive. And I know there are questions still around Justin Fields as a passer, but they have schemed up an effective run game, and between running backs, between quarterback carries, and then quarterback scrambles, they are really putting defenses on their heels, and Justin Fields is starting to feel himself. He made a couple of really good throws in that game, and yes, a lot of it's easy formulated stuff for him, but that's fine, because if the recipe is using all of that stuff to get him in a groove, and then he slings some beautiful deep balls, like, just a couple of times a game, he can really do that. And the Bears are going to be at home for a Bears crowd that has been lacking good football for a while. After that game last week, I think they're going to be pretty hyped up. Chicago's kind of a special place for football. So I'm feeling the Bears here. I know it's 3 points, and, they haven't really dominated anybody yet. But still, I think, riding the wave of the season, I think that this is going to be a good game. Yeah, when they face some better teams, will they fall back to earth a little bit? Perhaps. But the Lions, they just haven't really put it all together. And their main win of late has been against a team that has, basically beaten nobody. They're on, a 5-game losing streak now, and the vibes are just awful in Green Bay. So I'm not really going to use that as a great measuring stick for the Lions. So I'm taking the Bears at -3. All right. We have, the game of the week, baby. The Indianapolis Colts plus 4.5 at the Las Vegas Raiders. Okay, so obviously, big news is Frank Reich is out, Jeff Saturday is in. I don't hate this move as much as a lot of people do. I know it's not the norm, but the reality is that almost no interim head coach ever has ended up being the head coach in the following season. So I don't know what the obsession is to have a guy on the staff come in and be the leader. As long as you've got a guy who was already on the staff calling plays for both offense and defense, that would be insane to bring a play caller in from outside for either. That would make no sense. But the head coach, if he's not calling plays, then how much does it really matter? He's more of a stabilizing force there. And if Jeff Saturday is a stabilizing force just by nature from who he is, then I don't think it matters that much. Now, I don't think that means they're going to win games, but I just think if you're going to have a awful closing of the season, just find a guy who you trust to be like an emotional, leader and support system. So I think it's fun to talk about, but also I think that it's heavily overblown the nature of this move that they made. But in terms of picking the game, the Raiders are 4.5-point favorites, even though they have been absolutely awful this year. So what do we think? Do the Colts come in and surprise people, or are the Raiders going to get their first win in a while over a struggling team?
I have no idea on this game. It sounds like the Colts are gonna do this thing where they're gonna start Sam Ehlinger, and then if it doesn't go well through like a quarter and a half, they'll bench him and go back with Matt Ryan. So clearly, the Colts seem to think they can salvage something this season. I'm not entirely certain about that. I think Saturday was brought in mainly to just evaluate what's going on within the locker room, who's in it to be a Colt for not just the rest of this year, but for the following couple of years, kind of setting the table for next offseason when they kind of do a reshuffling of how things go. As far as this game goes, I took the Colts pretty early this week +6. There's no way I can trust the Raiders to try to win by a touchdown, and still with this spread, the Raiders would have to win by 5 points. So essentially, a touchdown spread in my mind, to simplify it out. I can't trust the Raiders to do that. So I don't know. I don't think the Colts are going to win. I think if anything, they're going to keep it close and then lose short at the end. If I would tell you one thing, 2 bets I'd take here: Raiders first half spread, take them because the Colts are 0-9 in the first half against the spread this year, and I'd also take the under because the Colts the under is 8-1 in Colts games this season. So do not expect a lot of points in this game, mainly because don't think the Colts have much of an offensive game plan, and also the Raiders outside of Devontae Adams don't seem to be scoring a lot of points. So I'd take the Colts +4.5 here. Don't feel great about it because I could see the Colts getting blown out, but I'll stick with the Colts +4.5.
Yeah, I also took the Colts earlier this week when it was at 6.5, and I'm still confident with the 4.5-point spread. The Raiders have been such a mess for the last couple of weeks. And it's kind of funny. Josh Jacobs, who's been kind of a okay starter, he had a really good rookie season, and since then, kind of middle of the pack as a running back, had a really good couple weeks in a row there, and everyone's like, "Oh, he's a top 5 back again." Then he immediately came back down to earth. I don't see him getting back to that really good status again in this game against the Colts defense. That Colts defense, despite the injuries they've suffered this season, has been really good. They're top 10 in a lot of the categories on defense, including against the pass, which is going to play a huge factor in this game. No Hunter Renfrow, no Darren Waller. I think those are going to be big factors for the Raiders on offense. It's going to be a lot of Devontae Adams, and weirdly, Carr and Adams have no connection. They're not on the same page a lot. It is not really working out so well for them right now. I think that's going to play a huge factor. And then the other thing is, what Jeff Saturday was a former offensive lineman in this league. He is going to want to run the football 100 times. He may not throw a pass in this game. They may have Sam Ehlinger hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor, who he's not on the injury report from what I've seen, so he seems to be 100% healthy for the first time in a long time this season, they're going to ride him to the ground in this game because that's who Jeff Saturday was as an offensive lineman. He loved to run the football. That's what all offensive linemen like to do. I think he's going to want to do that in this game. It's going to bleed a lot of clock. It's not going to give the Raiders offense much chance to get a rhythm going. I don't know if the Colts win this game, but I think on defense and run game alone, they're going to keep it close.
Yeah, I can't believe that after everything that has happened this week, all three of us are going to take the Colts to cover this game. But I agree with you. I mean, without Darren Waller, without Hunter Renfrow, a bad offensive line, they're relying totally on Devontae Adams and Jacob.
Josh Jacobs.
Jacob. You know, the Raiders are at the point where they just cut their other first-round pick from 2019. So it's like Jonathan Abram is out now, and it's like, not that he was ever a great player, but it's just like it just feels like things are going very, very poorly there. And you're right. If Jeff Saturday can come in, get this offensive line functioning in a little bit better of a capacity, they give the ball to Jonathan Taylor a lot of times in this game, and then they trust their defense. That's probably a recipe for success. Ultimately, it will come down to this. I do think that Sam Ehlinger will probably get benched in this game. If the report is correct, it's probably going to happen. And it will really just depend on how bad of a situation will he put the Colts in before that benching happens. If he's just not completing passes, looks bad in the offense, and he's throwing the ball away or taking sacks, then I'm pretty confident that they can cover by the time that Matt Ryan is reinserted. But if his mistakes are, throwing a pick six, or like throwing a turnover or a fumble or something, and then throwing a pick six and putting the Colts down by a touchdown just by being out there, that's probably the recipe for the Raiders to cover this game. So I don't know. I mean, I kind of think the Colts are going to win this game outright, to be perfectly honest, as long as those early turnovers don't happen. But I do think that they can cover. All right, so real quick, before we move on to the next game, have you guys been watching this Munich game at all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Buccaneers are running away with it, and it looks like there's a lot of energy and passion coming off of the Seahawks sideline at the moment. But yeah, they can't get it done. It looks like the Bucs defense is just smothering them and playing really, really well.
And they finally got some kind of run game going. White's running the ball really well.
Yeah, and so is Fournette. And the Seahawks on the flip side, Walker's actually not doing all that great because Tampa's run defense is actually relatively good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know this is probably kind of like a cold take. Like people are, maybe this is a hot take actually, because I don't think a lot of people are agreeing with it. I think Kenneth Walker is good. I think some of the hype, it's a recency bias thing. You know what I mean? Like everybody rides the NFL wave week to week to week, and everybody's the best player in the league one week, and then they stink the next week. I think he's a good player. I think some of the hype is a little bit excessive. I think he might win Rookie of the Year just from stats by the end of the season. We'll see. But I think Chris Olave is better rookie. I think Garrett Wilson's better rookie. You know what I mean? I think Dameon Pierce is really good. He's not quite as explosive. And again, I think he'll just be another good running back. I think, the debate between those two guys is probably reasonable. Depends on what you want out of them. But anyway, that's just my little spiel about Kenneth Walker. Good player, but I think that there's a little bit of a hype train on him at the moment. And I think he'll just end up being like, a top 10, 12 type back. I don't think he's going to be a guy that's, consistently in that top 2, 3, 4 kind of status. But all right, moving along to two teams in the same division that cannot get anything done. All right, we have the Arizona Cardinals +3 at the Los Angeles Rams. Both teams are struggling. Cardinals are officially on Hard Knocks at the moment. I mean, this injury report's rather extensive as you watch the ticker go by. I mean, the Cardinals are missing Max Garcia and Rodney Hudson from their offensive line, Greg Dortch, Cody Ford, Dennis Gardeck, DJ Humphreys, Christian Matthew, Byron Murphy, Kyler Murray, Matt Prater. These guys are all questionable. So I don't know what that's going to amount to for them. The Rams, they have a little bit less extensive, but still, plenty of guys. So what do you think, Kyle? Do you think that the Rams are going to be able to cover a 3-point spread at home? I mean, neither team is playing good football at this point.
I've been trying to figure this out. Did Matt Stafford get out of concussion protocol? Not sure this is going to change.
It still says he's questionable.
Okay.
So I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out right now because it says he's questionable, but again, he was put on concussion protocol pretty late in the process, so I don't know how quickly he was going to be able to get out. Not that that's going to change my pick at all. I'm still taking the Rams -3 here. And the reason why, we've hit the second half of the season, man, and that means it's time to go against Cliff Kingsbury. This guy is a horrible second half of the season coach. I think so far in his career, he's 10-19 against the spread in the second half of the season. And so you combine that with the fact that Sean McVay is also, I believe, 11-1 or somewhere along that line against the Cardinals in his career. This is not a good matchup this has not been a good matchup for the Cardinals. This is not a good matchup for them again today. Even if Matthew Stafford doesn't play, I've already seen John Wolford beat the Cardinals once before when a playoff spot was on the line. So I'm going to go back to that. I think McVay, I understand all the concerns with the Rams right now, but no way I'm taking the Cardinals here, especially with Kyler Murray being banged up and all that. And I've said it before, I think Cliff might be on his way out, even though they just gave him an extension. So I'll take the Rams -3.
Yeah, I'm also going to take the Rams in this game. These two teams are so similar in this matchup right now. Both quarterbacks questionable in this game. Neither team can run the football, and both teams have one overly dominant weapon at the wide receiver position and then just nothing really else working out. You've got DeAndre Hopkins and Cooper Kupp. It's going to be a lot of those guys in this game, no matter who's in that quarterback. But I'm going to take the Rams for a couple of reasons. One, defense. The Cardinals' defense is kind of a mess right now. They are good against the run, but with a team who doesn't run the football, how useful is that in this game? They're 25th against the pass, which I think is going to be huge when you're going up against Cooper Kupp. I think Allen Robinson's got a little bit of a groove. He had a couple big catches in that last game against the Bucs that were pretty impressive. So I think he's going to finally get something going for this offense. And then the other big reason is coaching. Like you mentioned, Kyle, I think Cliff Kingsbury could very well be out after this season if it continues the way it's going. And Sean McVay is a coach I'm going to bet on him to win over almost any other coach in this league. He's one of those type of coaches where it's really hard to not bet for him. And so even with all the injuries to this team, I think the Rams just have the overall talent on both sides of the football, especially on defense, to come away with a win here. 3 points, bit scary to bet on a team who's not been playing well, but when the other team has been playing equally as bad, it makes me a little bit more confident in my pick. So I'm going to take the Rams to cover the 3-point spread at home.
This game in Munich is getting a little bit of fun. The Seahawks have opened the second half with some fire. I like it. I like the energy. All right. Yeah, I am also going to take the Rams. And the main reason is this. You put that already bad offensive line that's exceptionally banged up, and you just let Aaron Donald wreak havoc on that line, it is going to be a disaster. And I think if you can get Jalen Ramsey to play against DeAndre Hopkins, I don't know if he'll shadow him, but if he does, I think, that this is the kind of game where two players can wreck it. So I'm going to take them as well. And you know what? Even if Matthew Stafford doesn't play, maybe that means the ball will actually get distributed more among players that are not just named Cooper Kupp, and maybe that benefits the offense overall. So, yeah, I mean, am I super confident? No, but the Cardinals are spiraling right now, and I think if they lose this game, it's absolutely possible that they could move on from Cliff Kingsbury. I'm curious to see how this Hard Knocks season plays out, because this is one of the worst situations for a team that is on an in-season version of something like this, whether it be All or Nothing or Hard Knocks, because there have been situations where it ended up not going well, like even last year with the Colts, where they were in it till the very end and then they lost the final game. And yeah, that sucks. But they were winning games throughout the course of the season. They still had a winning record.
Mm-hmm.
We've had other seasons that didn't go that well. That Rams season, I think it was 2016 when they had Jared Goff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that didn't go well. But they had just moved from to a new state. They had just drafted Jared Goff. So it was maybe the expectations were a little higher and they fell short, but the extension given to the GM, head coach, and quarterback, and the fact that they made the playoffs this year, this is a wildly disappointing season for everybody involved. And I think that the signs were all there if we were willing to look and see that this team was incomplete. There were problems with the offensive line and some of the decision-making process that had led them to perhaps overperforming. It's a process over results league, and I think that we've just seen that. So I don't think it's really that shocking, but it's definitely disappointing to anybody who, is a fan of the Arizona Cardinals, particularly those who work for the organization. All right. So next up, we have the Dallas Cowboys -4 at the Green Bay Packers. All right, so this is the Mike McCarthy revenge game, as they say. So how do we feel about this, Kyle? Do we think that the Packers are going to be able to defend their home turf to the tune of 4 points, or do we think the Cowboys are going to go in and steamroll the Packers, who, let's be honest, are kind of falling apart?
Yeah, this is kind of a hard game because I'm not entirely certain how I feel about the Cowboys in terms of if they're actually getting on track offensively with Dak. I realize they're coming off that incredible offensive output against the Bears, but we talked about it. Bears aren't the greatest defense in the world, so that might have been an anomaly. Packers do have a good defense, but again, I'm gonna go with the Cowboys -4 here and stick to my my belief in the terms of I don't think the Packers are turning around. I think this is a bad football team, and therefore I'm going to just start fading them regardless in any scenario. I do realize I think this is the largest spread Rodgers has been an underdog in his own at Lambeau Field in his career. So kind of an anomaly there. He usually performs well in those situations, although I think he's 2-2 against the spread in those specific spots. I'm gonna go with the Cowboys -4 here. As long as the Cowboys don't try to do anything stupid like not hand the ball off to Tony Pollard or try to keep the thing balanced, they should be able to win by at least 5 points. So I realize as I said that McCarthy is capable of doing stupid things like that, but I think he's going to be wired in. I think he's going to stick to the things that he knows they're good enough to do and knows the pathway to beat Green Bay. So I think they're going to come in, get this road victory, and cover by at least 4 points.
Yeah, this is my easiest pick of the week. I've got the Cowboys covering this game.
I totally agree.
The Cowboys, since Dak has been back, Dak hasn't done anything exceptional since he's come back, but they're averaging 39 points a game. That offense is humming. The Packers haven't scored 30 points in a single game this season. So just in that alone should tell you should take the Cowboys in this game. And that Cowboys defense, Micah Parsons is going to be in Aaron Rodgers' grill the entire game. And I'm betting on Micah Parsons in this game 10 times out of 10. He was my defensive player of the year pick coming into this game. I think he's going to show why he should be the defensive player of the year after this game. And then just the total defense in general. I mean, the Cowboys do struggle against the run, but the Packers, for some reason, their two most talented players on offense are their running backs, and they've completely exiled them out of the offense. It's the strangest thing. Jones and Dillon do not get the football, and I don't get it. The Packers are a mess offensively. They're not balanced. They're too Aaron Rodgers dependent without the weapons to help him out. And that Cowboys defense, they're gonna get to Aaron Rodgers a ton in this game. They're not gonna let them score many points. And like you said, Kyle, as long as the Cowboys offense keeps it balanced, keeps Tony Pollard involved the way he has been, it's gonna be a easy victory in my opinion, for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I 100% agree. This is the easiest pick for me of the entire week. How can the Cowboys not cover a 4-point spread? I know it's on the road, but who is Aaron Rodgers going to throw the ball to?
Mm-hmm.
Romeo Doubs is out. I mean,
Randall Cobb out.
That's it. I mean, what is Randall Cobb out? I didn't see him.
He's on the IR, so.
He's still on IR. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I mean, who's he throwing the ball to? Who? And the reason that they're not giving the ball to the running backs is because nobody respects their receivers, so they're just putting extra men in the box. They can just focus on the run without any real concern, and they press, and guys aren't really getting open. They're not on the same page enough to like hit those tight windows even when they do play against zone coverage. So it's an offense that's not working right now, and I think there's a key difference between what the Chiefs have done and what the Packers have done. And a lot of people put them in the same boat.
Mm-hmm.
When the Packers moved on from Devontae Adams, who was their best receiver? I mean, we're talking about Allen Lazard, right? Mm-hmm. And when the Chiefs move on from Tyreek Hill, who's their best receiver? Travis Kelce, who, regardless of position, is still probably one of the top 5 receiving options in the NFL. So a lot of people put them in the same category, and it really wasn't the case. And then on top of that, you look at, if you want your offense to be structured around a strong offensive line and a very high quality quarterback dispersing the ball to receiving options who maybe aren't elite, aside from Travis Kelce, you can't have a bunch of those receiving options, be guys who are just learning how to play in the NFL. You need those guys to be, on point. You need them to be, even if they're not world beaters, they need to be getting to the right spot. They need to know how to beat, press coverage, when it matters, even if they're not hitting, 100 yards at receiving in a game. They need to be, hitting 45 yards receiving in a game and, converting in key moments. When you have multiple rookies or second-year players as those guys, it doesn't put the quarterback in an advantageous situation. Whereas with the Chiefs, they've got a bunch of these guys who have been in the league for like 3, 4, 5 years at this point. Mecole Hardman, Juju Smith-Schuster, Equanimeous St. Brown, he's on the Chiefs, right? So these are, none of those guys are incredible players, but they all have been in the league long enough to learn the basics of the position and be in the right spot at the right time. You know what I mean? It's just, there are very key differences despite an apparent obvious similarity. So I just think that there was a miss in terms of what the expectations were going into the season, and the Cowboys are my pick at -4. That's my long way of saying that. All right, let's pick Sunday Night Football so that we can watch this game and see if the Seahawks can do something special, even though it looks like they still can't stop the run. All right, the 49ers are home favorites of 7.5 versus the Los Angeles Chargers. That seems a little bit high to me. That seems like, I know the Chargers aren't playing that well. I need to really think about that for a second and just double check this injury report here, because I love what the 49ers have on offense, all of the different versatile pieces. I know that the Chargers have had struggles on both offense and defense, but still they have a winning record. So +7.5 just seems like a big spread. Maybe you guys will talk me into it, or I'll talk myself into it by the time we're done with this. Kyle, what do you think?
I really want to take the 49ers here, to be frankly honest, but I can't do that, because if you go back into Justin Herbert's career, this is, I believe, is the 3rd highest spread he's been an underdog in, and in the previous 3 where it's been 7 or more, he's covered. So I realize the Chargers are all sorts of banged up. I think they have they feel like one of the more fraudulent record teams in the NFL right now. But with this spread, I'm going to take them to at least cover by the 7.5 margin. I think Justin does at least enough not to win the game, but at least keep them close and competitive. And one thing I would note, Herbert's actually been really, really poor in the second half of games. I believe I read around he's 2-6 in the second half spread in games this season. So that might be something to look at if the 49ers are down at halftime for whatever the reason, or if they are down at halftime, that might be the time to get a good number on the 49ers at halftime. If they are down, or even if they are up at halftime, you shouldn't expect the Chargers to make a comeback here. But I will take the Chargers plus 7.5. I just think the number's just a little bit too big for me to go on the 49ers side.
This spread's kind of funny to me because earlier in the week it was at like 7 points, and I had the Chargers covering. I now have the Niners covering a 7.5 point spread, and the biggest reason is when the final injury report came out, these are who's out for the Chargers in this game. No Dustin Hopkins, their starting kicker. No Keenan Allen. No Joey Bosa. No J.C. Jackson. Donald Parham out. Jalen Guyton's still out. Rashawn Slater's still out. They've got and then Mike Williams is also out. So their top two receivers, their top corner, top pass rusher, and top tackle. That's a ton of talent not in this game. And meanwhile, on the other side, the Niners might have just lost Jason Verrett, who's a very good corner, just riddled with injuries in his career, which is really tough to see. But that defense is still humming. It's still one of the best defenses in football. And they're actually getting healthier on the offensive side of the ball. Deebo Samuel's 100%, George Kittle's 100%, McCaffrey's 100%, and Ayuk is 100%. That's a ton of talent for this really bad Chargers defense to account for. I think the quarterback situation, it's really hard to take Justin Herbert to lose by 8 points when you're playing against Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, the quarterback talent is just so much on one side over the other. But all Jimmy does is win games, and when he has the talent on offense that he has around him with that offensive line and the defense the way they're playing against, it's going to be really tough, in my opinion, for the Chargers to even score points, let alone have the ball enough to keep it close. So I think the Niners, out of health and that defense alone, is going to win this game pretty easily.
Did you guys just see the play that was made in Munich?
Yeah, I was just looking at that on my TV. I didn't see the setup to that. I don't know why Tom Brady's running a wide receiver route, but then again, he's the offensive coordinator, so he probably called his own number.
I don't know. That was bizarre. Okay, I'm gonna have to watch the replay of that better in a minute. But okay, it's true that the quarterback disparity it's notable in this game. Justin Herbert is a much better quarterback. He hasn't been himself since the rib injury. I don't think he's really quite all the way back. I think that's going to be a nagging injury for him throughout the entire season. He clearly can still play, but it's hard to put a team on your back when you have just like probably a consistent pain throughout every single game that you play somewhere in your core, which, it's a rib injury, but in the torso area. There's a lot of torque that's put on there especially when you throw the ball the way that he does. But you know who runs the ball really well? The San Francisco 49ers in a very versatile run scheme. You want to know who doesn't stop the run very well? The Los Angeles Chargers. So, I mean, they can't really rush the passer or cover right now either. But if you can't stop this run, then they don't even have to put the ball in the hands of Jimmy Garoppolo. And this defense is exceptional as well. So it's just going to be a massive undertaking for Justin Herbert to win this game. Plus 7.5 is probably a more realistic feat, but I will still take the 49ers in this game. I hope it's close. I kind of even hope my pick is wrong just for, the sake of having a good primetime Sunday night football game. But, if that doesn't happen, it's kind of a shame, but I don't know. I still got to take the 49ers here. I talked myself into it because it ultimately comes down to the fact that the Chargers just can't stop the run. They cannot stop the run at all. And this is maybe the most dynamic running team in the league outside of perhaps the Cleveland Browns. And I think that this team is even more versatile running the ball because they can put the ball in the hands of Ayuk. They can put it in the hands of Deebo Samuel. They can put it in the hands of
C-Mac.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, yes, because he's the running back, but they
Yeah.
can even put it in the hands of Juszczyk too. So, like, if they need to, they can do any of that. And I just don't even know how many pass attempts Jimmy Garoppolo is even going to have. What a bizarre play that just was. I cannot get over that was an attempted pass. Okay. Well, whatever. I mean, if you want to give the game away after dominating the first half, you go right ahead, Tampa. I picked the Seahawks to cover anyway. All right. So let's take a look back at the picks from last week. I do not recall at all how that went for me. If it tracks with the rest of the past couple weeks, probably not well, but let's see. Brison and Kyle, you guys tied last week with 7.5. Nice. I was one behind you with 6.5. Actually, you know what? I think I pushed on like 3 games last week.
Yeah.
So did I.
Yeah.
There were a lot of 3-point spreads, and coincidentally enough, there were a lot of 3-point games. So
Yeah.
there was a lot of pushing for last week, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. And so you guys both won the week. You tied for first in the week. The Redbeard had 7, and I was at 6.5 in 4th place. And then let's see, standings overall. That puts me another point behind for sure. Yeah, the Redbeard is comfortably in the lead at 71.5 now. He owned the first few weeks of the year, had a little dip, and then he's been picking really, really well. Kyle, you're in second place at 68.5. I'm in third place with 64, tied with Jordan Ramos. And Brison, you're at 60.5. Again, I don't remember what your week 1 picks were, but that probably
I'll have to go back and rewatch that one and look at this. Look at how they all went.
Go back and listen and manually put them in later. But I'm assuming that I don't think you had a great week that week, but I think you did better than 3.5. So you're probably technically in third place at the moment. All right. That's going to do it for us this week. Thank you for listening to and watching, now that we're live, to the Gridiron Heroics Football Show Weekly Pick'em. I am going to settle in, drink my coffee, and watch some morning football over in Munich. And big thanks to Noah Ashley, our producer, for getting the injury report done and helping us out with all of our graphics. Next week, I do believe that we're going to be starting a second half of this show on Sunday mornings, where we are looking at some individual matchups and using some game film to break down like some of the best tackle versus edge matchups, some of the best receiver versus corner matchups. But that will be next week. And so I'll update everybody as we get there throughout the week. But thanks again. And Kyle, let everybody know where they can find you until then.
Yep, you can just find me. All my work's on Gridiron Heroics, and then at Kyle_Nishida on Twitter.
Right on. And Brison?
You can see me on Twitter at Brison Owens 16. That's Brison. Then you can see me on here on Gridiron Heroics and on DenverSportsBetting.com.
Right on. We will see you guys all next week.